Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Tech Talk on Dynamics 365 Supplier Communications Agent. My name is Vijayashankar and I'm a Senior Solution Architect in Fast Track, and I will be moderating this session. So we have a number of presenters as well as members of our engineering team today. In addition to myself, we have Beatriz, who is a Senior Product Manager in AI ERP. Then is Conrad, Principal Engineering Manager, AI ERP. And Ankur Srivatsava, Senior Fast Track Architect. This is the agenda for a Tech Talk today. So we'll start with the Supplier Communications Agent by providing an overview, the business process and its use case. We'll follow that up with the technical architecture. Then we'll have the setup and installation, timeline, monetization, resources, and finally we'll open it up for Q&A. Having said that, we would still encourage you to use the Q&A panel throughout to ask your questions. So let's look at a typical day in the life of a procurement personnel. So purchasing team, they spend a large part of their day manually managing supplier communications and navigating across multiple products. Delays are often common due to inability to respond in a timely fashion. And there is also a high possibility of manual errors which can lead to incorrect updates. So when issues arise, it's difficult to quickly find alternatives or communicate effectively with stakeholders, leading to lost revenue and customer dissatisfaction. So what does the future look like with the supplier communications agent? The supplier communications agent automatically reads and extracts key information from supplier emails, such as order confirmations or changes to purchase order. This can save valuable time in addition to improving responsiveness and accuracy. The agent can also help draft emails to follow up with suppliers who have not confirmed the purchase order or delayed the purchase order delivery. With the help of a configuration setting, the purchasing team can determine if they would like to review the draft before it is sent or directly send the email. The agent reduces the risk of human errors by streamlining your order updates and tracking changes accurately. It therefore empowers the procurement team to be more proactive, efficient, and resilient. So let's look at the as-is process of purchase order. So purchase order is created in D365 and then the purchase order is sent to vendor. The procurement personnel spend a considerable amount of time following up with the vendor for confirmation. And when a response is received, whether it's a confirmation or a change request to the purchase order, it must be manually reviewed and the purchase order is updated accordingly. The procurement personnel also spends time following up with the supplier on delayed purchase order. So as you can see the problem statement, there are too many manual interventions, manual follow-up, and manual updates that happen in this entire purchase order cycle. So what does a supplier communication agent do, and how does it address the problem statement? So the supplier communications agent can help purchasing teams to be more productive by automating the routine communication, follow up with suppliers, and updating the purchase orders so that they can focus on the higher value adding tasks for the organization. So today, the procurement personnel, they end up spending a significant portion of their time on manual and repetitive tasks. So these activities not only consume time, but also drive up operational costs. So by automating these tasks, the supplier communications agent allows procurement teams to focus on strategic, high-impact work, improving both productivity and cost efficiency. So how does the to-be process of purchase order function with the supplier communications agent? So after the purchase order is sent to the supplier, the agent can create a draft of the email for unconfirmed purchase order that the procurement personnel can review and then send to the supplier. When the procurement personnel receives confirmation from purchase order or they receive a request for change to the purchase order, the agent can read the email and summarize the changes to the procurement personnel to accept or reject the responses from the supplier, which can then update the purchase order. The agent can create a draft email for follow-up on delayed purchase order as well. So as we discussed earlier, the email we can either have a draft email, or depending on a configuration setting, the email can be automatically sent. I will now hand it over to Beatriz, who will take you through the use case and a demo of each of those 4 portions. Beatriz, over to you.
Thank you, Adi. So the first part is that follow-up where we have sent the PO to the vendor, but they have not replied. We're just going to do it with our standard Contoso demo data. So in this case, I am the purchaser, I am Julia, and then I would like to follow up with Acme Supplies for that purchase order that they have not confirmed. So now going to the demo, what I would do when I have it set up is I have a section directed to follow up. So in that follow-up, I already had configured that section for unconfirmed purchase orders, and it automatically found that purchase order of Acme Supplies that is not confirmed yet, and it automatically created the email for me. So I only need to review it and send it. The configuration here, how this purchase order was picked, is because it is coming in the next 2 months. That's the configuration I said. It's not confirmed, it has not been delivered yet, and it's assigned to me. And this is fully configurable, so you can choose yourself what is the criteria that you would like. You can configure it for a certain vendor, a certain set of vendors. When the orders are not confirmed in the next 2 days, so you're proactive for the next 2 days. If you would like to have a longer time horizon, it's fully configurable by you. Also, in this setup, you can configure the tone of the email, if it should be formal or casual, if it should be urgent, non-urgent, the fields that should be included in that email. It will, of course, be the purchase order number, but you may want to have the site and warehouse it must be delivered to, or most commonly, the requested receipt date. As well, you can include your signature with whatever signature you usually use, and an AI disclaimer if you send it automatically. So this would be the case for follow-up. And then that vendor confirms the order. We can take the example of another vendor that just confirmed an order that we sent. It's Land Packaging Supplies. And in this case, the process would be they would usually just send an email to my personal inbox, and then that contains the PO confirmation. So going to the demo on that setup with Supplier Communications Agent, I already have set up the email inbox to be read. So on the left side, you see all the emails that came to my inbox. It automatically detected that is talking about 127 purchase order. It's a confirmation. They confirmed everything as I asked. So I can just quickly apply changes, and then it will respect all the settings of the purchase order confirmation and confirm that order for me. As simple as that. So it saves my time from having to open the email, open the system, going into the system and making that change. I just need to do one click to apply all the suggestions. The same way, if it would have not been a confirmation, but it would have been a change request, no issues. It's still the same. We just take another email that I sent a confirmation about, and in this change, the vendor cannot deliver as I requested. So in the demo, this would be the same way. I go on purchase order updates, and then I see the changes that Land Packaging Supply is telling me. So to start with, I see the confirmed receipt date is different than what I asked. I see always the email, same as before, at the bottom, including any attachments that it may have. And in here, it tells me that I have to review some column mappings. This is because in the email, in that PDF attached, it used DLB date, and then the agent mapped it to confirm delivery date. So I review that, say that it's all good, I apply the suggestions. I'm just showing you here how the setup for this part is. It's going into this part where when any vendor sends an email about purchase orders to that email address, which is my personal email address, it will show me a summary of the changes. Here, I could select either my own personal email address, work email address, of course, or if we have a team email address, it could also be that one. So depending on the setup your company has, you could have each of the purchasers' email address, if that's the one they use to communicate with vendors, or you could have the team email address where you would have all the communications going through. We have seen from customer experience that in general, a common email address, it's better for covering for vacations, leave, etc. So all the team is aware of that communication. And in this case, you can start small by only monitoring communications from a certain vendor or a set of vendors, so that any vendor can be changed to a set of vendors. And when you do that, it's the email addresses that you have saved in the system. And then it takes all the email and email addresses from the domain of the vendor. So you make sure you don't miss any communication from the vendor whenever the contact person you have changes and you have not saved that on the system. So that was the PO change request. Very easy as well. Now it's all good. Then we received confirmation for some orders, a PO change request from the vendors for some others, and we were good with those changes. Now we're expecting the goods. And that's all right. No, if the goods come on time, it's perfect. But there may be cases where, unfortunately, they do not come on time. For those, you always want to follow up on what happened to that delayed purchase order to the vendor, like when is it coming specifically. So for that, with the supplier communications agent, it would be in the following way. Same as before, I have the follow-up section in which I go, and then I have on the left the section for delayed purchase orders, and it quickly found this purchase order that was delayed. Again, included all the fields that I wanted and automatically drafted the email for me. I could, again, depending on that setting on the configure agents, I could automatically send it, and then we recommend that to start with, you just test to see how it looks like, and then if you're good with it, then you could always send that email right away without you needing to manually review it. We have a separate feature safeguarding the sending of emails, so that should be good and covered. Something that passed quickly before, and it's that here, when the vendor sends a change on pieces or eaches, is something that you don't have saved in the system, so you could always save these, teach these to the agent. If you always wanted to do it for all vendors, the middle option, only for the specific vendor or just one time. And then these teachings that you do to the agent would always be saved in this taught items screen. So you can always review what you taught the item. In this case, the agent is communicating in pieces, but the purchase order says eaches, and that's what you have saved in the system. They're indeed equivalent, but this could be either for fields, like in this case, pieces to eaches. It's also common with cartons and cassettes. Or it could be, as we saw before, with columns. The vendor is communicating in the PDF with some lingo that you don't have saved in the system, or some shortenings, abbreviations, industry standards. You can always map that to what you have on the system so the agent next time remembers and it doesn't need to ask you. As you quickly saw, you can configure multiple agents, either that one for drafting the emails or sending them directly, and also for reading email inboxes. As you saw, the settings are fully configurable to the criteria you want, and you can create as many of them as you would like. And you choose yourself the criteria. on the These Criteria section to fit whatever you would like to follow up on. As examples, it could be followed up on unconfirmed orders that were sent more than 3 days ago. The system doesn't know when they're sent, but you could use the created date. Or follow up on unconfirmed orders for the next 5 months. If you have international suppliers, so you would want to be ahead in time. Or maybe for follow-up on the late orders, you want to follow up after 2 days because you want to keep 1 day of margin. Or maybe after 5 as a second reminder if they still have not. Let's just take a quick look on how that would work if you have different ones. You can always go from that immersive home to that agents section. You will have on that part every one that you configured. You can always edit to see the configuration. And to create a new one, you simply go to library and choose the agent you would like. Once you have many, then it may be relevant to see the activity. And you will always find it here. And that's how you could use many different agents. Now we can continue into the technical architecture.
So what Beatriz has just demonstrated here, and Adi, is that there are 2 agentic flows behind the scenes. So that is what you would see if you go to Microsoft Copilot Studio. You would see the first one here, which we call the inbound communication agent. This agent supports the reading of emails. So the first challenge to solve for us here is to get a hold of the emails. For this, we leverage the Dataverse server-side sync functionality. This is something that's been available in the market for several years at this point. This allows you to synchronize emails from Microsoft or a third-party email provider into Dataverse. The configuration of this will be described later. Then, once we have the emails, we have the agent, which will be a combination of Power Automate Flow and the Microsoft Copilot Studio agent. The flow will make sure that we get the emails from the Dataverse tables, and we then extract both from attachments. Currently, we support extracting from PDF files. So we do not currently support extraction from things like Word or Excel files, but this will come in the future. And then, of course, text from the email body itself. Once we've extracted this information, we're populating first staging tables on Dataverse. Then the next thing we do is that we make sure we have these data also staged on our Dynamics 365 for SEN or F&O side. Once staged, we begin the mapping and matching process. What this means is that based on the extracted information, we want to figure out which purchase order are we talking about. Once we know which purchase order, we want to identify which changes for the purchase order is it that we would like to stage for the user to eventually review and apply. Once the mapping and matching is performed, then the email is considered completely processed. On this slide, we have the outbound communication agent. So this is the agent that is responsible for generating the follow-up emails. As you can see, this is somewhat more simple than the previous flow. What the agent does here is that it queries F&O or Dynamics 365 for supply chain management to get the orders that are meeting the criteria that the user has defined in the agent configuration for the follow-up emails. It will then iterate over these orders to generate the email using a combination of a LLO prompt for the natural language description and a more static sequential execution for the detail of the order. Now, there is checks in place to make sure that we do not regenerate emails for the same order over and over if no changes has been made to the order. Once the emails are generated, the email will be saved to F&O. And although not depicted in this diagram, we do have the capability to automatically send emails as well, making this flow. This is it for the architectural design for our two agentic flows.
Thanks, Dennis. So let's talk about setup and installation for Dataverse side. First, basically the system administrator must enable server-side synchronization to ensure incoming emails are synced to Dynamics 365. The second point is basically for that, you need to have a mailbox, which could be either private or shared mailbox. Now for private mailbox, make sure mailbox owner must update personalization settings to track all emails. And for the shared mailbox, make sure to create a queue in Power Platform Admin Center and allow all users accessing the shared mailbox to read and manage email content. Post that, we need to enable the necessary flows by creating a dedicated users and configuring the connection using a PowerShell script. We will provide that PowerShell script which you need to run here. And what it will do, it will create the flows such as speed up updates in purchase order with supplier communication agent and self-heal speed up updates in purchase orders with supplier communication agent. It will ensure proper processing of incoming emails related to supplier communications. Now, let's talk about setup and installation for finance and operations side. Now here, you must be running Microsoft Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management version as 10.044 or later. You need to enable required features in feature management, and these features are preview immersive home, production ready preview agent management, production ready preview supplier communication agent. Now, last step is to configure supplier communication agents for inbound email processing. And for that, you need to navigate to the agents module and then open the agents preview form and move to library tab within the Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. Here you need to select speed up updates in purchase order with supplier communication agent for inbound operation. Now, in the below diagram, you can see that you need to provide details specific to vendors. You need to provide details specific to private or shared mailbox. After that, you need to click activate and wait it to be completed. Now, I will hand over it to Beatriz to talk about timeline and other details.
So regarding timeline, we have been for a while having it on private preview. So we have been working directly with customers on improving this functionality and make sure it works for them. So it's been thoroughly tested and worked for a while. And now it's when it becomes production ready public preview. This basically means that it's already out there, it's public preview, so we can still make changes. And it is production ready. So if you like it, if you're going ahead with it, you can just enable it in your production environment. Of course, as always, we recommend you start in Sandbox, you test it, make sure you like it, that it works for your data, and then you go to production. And then we don't have a date yet for generally available, and we are very much looking forward to your feedback to make sure it has all you need for making it generally available. Then this is the timeline. We continue with monetization. Yes, it will be monetized separately to the standard licenses of supply chain management. And how that will be is using Microsoft Copilot Studio messages. So what you see here is the standard monetization of Copilot Studio, where it has two options. You either have message packs, where you basically have a pack of 25,000 messages to be used on that month, and that costs $200 per pack on that month. And these messages can be used across all the tenants. So if you have separate agents, the supplier communications agent, other agents, or maybe you're building your own agents, you could use them across all of these. So it's not only supplier communications agent, but all. Or if you want to start small, you don't need that many messages, you have the pay as you go option, where every message is 1 cent of $1. So overall, you don't have that many amount of messages, but you have less. So a bit more of costs per message, but you don't need to commit to those full pack. These are the two standard options that you can go for using Copilot Studio Messages. And specifically for the agent, this is a standard, again, rates as of 1st of April 2025. Any agent action, both built by Microsoft, so Microsoft built agents like the Supplier Communications Agent, or if you build your own, any agent action is 5 messages. So what does this mean? And with messages, I'm always referring to the Microsoft Copilot Studio Messages, like the AI messages term, not the message as email, clarifying that is very important. So for the Supplier Communications Agent, the case would be, and let's take the whole flow here, okay? A purchase order is sent to the vendor. The vendor has not confirmed yet in a week, and then the delivery is in a week, so we would like to follow up on. It matches the criteria that the agent follows up. It drafts the email. So as you see on the table on the right, drafting that email, the email writing, is one action for writing that email. And then we said there's 5 messages per action, the AI messages. So that becomes 5 messages on Copilot Studio, like 5 units that will be charged on Copilot Studio. So that's for drafting one email. Again, remember that you can choose to draft, in the case of unconfirmed or delayed, 1 email per purchase order, or you can group all that you need to be sent to the vendor, so that criteria, and then group it into 1 email. That's for following up. Now, if there's an email to be read, so for reading that email, we use 4 actions. The agent uses 4 actions. Each action is 5 messages, so that becomes 20 messages. Again, 20 units of Copilot Studio that will be consumed. Just for reading that email, the body and the header, of course. If that email contains an attachment, the agent uses 2 more actions, Copilot Studio actions, and then that becomes 5 messages each, so it's 10 messages for that attachment. If there's multiple attachments, it would be more, meaning if the supplier sends the confirmation for 10 purchase orders in 1 email, it would be 20 for reading that email, and then 10 times 2 actions for reading all those attachments. So 2 per attachment. Again, here, this is the whole flow. So if the whole flow would be, we write 1 email, we read 1, and it has an attachment, we sum all of this up and would be 35 billed messages, which is $0.35 using the 0.01 message. This is independent, so you get charged for the number of actions. So you can use either just the follow-up, and then that would be 1 action per email that it writes, only the reading of emails, and then that would be $0.20 for reading 1 email, or reading 1 email with attachment, that would be 0.2 plus 0.1, so a total of $0.3 for that email that it reads. So it's independent, and the key is the information that you have on that table on what specifically it charges. Again, it's a public preview, and this will be the monetization. That is for the agent. So no matter if you use it on Sandbox and just want to test it out, or if you want to go to production and use it there, it will be monetized. It's for both. So there's unfortunately no different way or anything for testing. You still have to set up the settings for monetization and the Copilot Studio for Connect, like having these messages, and you will always be able to see there how much you're consuming. And now we have the resources. You have the Learn for all the documentation on the Supplier Communications Agent and the specific instructions for setup and configuring the agent. We also have a blog that you can just use for sharing quickly. If you want to share about the agent with your colleagues, it contains some pictures, high level of what we see today. In details, what I just explained about the monetization and the Copilot Studio messages, you will find on the Copilot Studio Learn. And then if you want to keep updated about the supplier communications agent, new things that we do, post questions, issues that you may be facing, use our Yammer.
Thanks, Beatriz. I'll just look at any pending questions. If the team wanted to ask anything, feel free to come off mute or you can type in the Q&A panel. So I think one of the questions is related to availability in region. So it's available outside United States. We have customers who are in private preview who have used it outside there in Europe and APAC and all of it. So yes, it's available as well. So information from vendors contact, will it auto update while it's sending the email? So I'm going to elaborate and just so that I'm detailing the question. So what this means is you're saying that in the case of where it is us, as in the organization, sending out emails to vendors, where either on multiple cases of follow-up, which is one of the follow-ups was the purchase order is not yet confirmed, or you not gotten the confirmation date for a vendor you're following up, or a follow-up where there is a delay to the purchase order and therefore you want to ask where the urgency is a bit more. In both those cases, yes, we were talking about how we can automatically configure to send that email, or you can set it up so that you're reviewing and then sending the email. So it does look at the details on the vendor to then identify, which email ID it has to send to. Yeah, I think I want to check on this one. Can the agent-generated email body include electronic signatures or company branding?
They're not electronic signatures, but as Beatriz illustrated, we do have the signature option where you can upload images.
I think the other one was, is agent available on production only? No, you can use it in sandboxes as well. And in fact, it's in public preview, so we would recommend you to use it in sandbox, test it before it's used elsewhere. And if you're having trouble setting it up, I think the Yammer is the best. Again, please do go to Learn. We'll share the links as well where you can look at the setup and configuration. But in addition, also you can use a Yammer if you're facing challenges to raise the questions there. Any other questions, team? I think I've answered everything that's pending in the panel.
The last one that just came, I can answer that one. It says, do we need to set up any setup in EDI, electronic data interchange in organization administration, or electronic document to make templates? No, you don't. And the purpose of the supplier communications agent is that you don't need EDI over many companies that do have EDI for some vendors still have the email communication in writing through email addresses. So they are not mutually exclusive. You can have EDI for some vendors and use EDI for them. And then you can use the supplier communications agent for the others where you don't have such a structured communication. You don't need to set up any templates, just configuring the criteria to whatever you would like to follow up on, include your signature that can include at the bottom your company logo or anything else that you would like. You fully configure the signature, you choose the fields that it would like to have. That is enough for the agent to draft that email. You don't need to set up any templates.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Hope the session was helpful. And we will publish the Tech Talk shortly, and it should come up in the Fast Track Tech Talk site. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.